Hailing from Missouri, now residing in Las Vegas, he has $2.6 million in live cashes and is a 3-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner. He obtained his law degree at 18 years old and was a pivotal character to ignite the 2003 moneymaker poker boom. Welcome to the Pokertube podcast, Dutch Boy.
What's up, Jeff? It's great to be here. Happy to be hanging out with you today.
Always fun to see you in the live tournaments. You're always causing chaos to the local fish, making their lives hell. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we seem to bump into each other a lot over like Venetian and Win.
Yeah, bound to happen. You know, going deep in tournaments in Vegas, it's a thing.
Yep.
So, what have you been up to recently, Dutch?
Well, I've just been on the grind. I feel like I feel like for me, there's 2 times of the year. You know, there's the World Series of Poker, and there's waiting for the World Series of Poker, and I'm in that second part of my year now. Just trying to show up to as many live tournaments as I can, and showing up for this imaginary, 45% ROI in every single little $200 and $300 tournament around town. That's the plan anyway, but I feel like I've been keeping weird hours, so I've been missing a few of these Venetians.
Yeah, you got to get that sleep schedule on point. Circadian rhythm, that 25-hour cycle is nature's way of torturing us.
Yeah.
There is a series going on at Venetian currently. We were talking earlier before the podcast, and I'm not playing as many Venetians as before, mainly because I realize how much of a factor the rake is in comparison to the Win Poker Classic, and how much more comfortable I am at the Win for some reason. I know you were going to play the Venetian today, slept in. It happens. You going to play tomorrow, 340, day 1A?
So I'm going to be skipping tomorrow. I've got a commitment this weekend. There's this big processing company. It's a convention called Money 2020 that comes into town every year, and they have a hackathon where you put together a little group, go in and code up a little project. And so I've got a group together, and we're going to be going into this hackathon on Saturday. It's kind of, I'm not really like a full-time coder or developer or anything. It's just kind of more for fun.
Is that for hacking cryptocurrencies?
No, it doesn't. The project that we're going to be doing doesn't have anything to do with cryptocurrencies. Everyone, like in past years though, like they've had like Coinbase, for example, sponsor the hackathon, and a lot of the projects were crypto based. But we're not doing a crypto based project. We're doing a calorie counting project.
And that's where companies hire you to try to infiltrate their network or make sure it's hacker proof, and there's a reward if you can.
No, what it is you basically have your team together, and you go into this hackathon, and they when they call it a hackathon, they mean more like trying to put something together instead of actually like doing some sort of computer security related hacking. So it's more like we're just putting together a little project in 36 hours and putting it up against a bunch of other teams competing for a prize. I did this 2 years ago and actually took down one of the sponsor prizes. So a couple of the guys who were on that team wanted to do it again. So here we go. Going to be missing the Venetian, and hopefully, for another weird tournament, basically.
Yeah, no, you got to set your priorities, a little variety. You can't play these dailies every time.
Yeah, it's kind of
serious.
It's kind of interesting though when you talk about rake, because we get so used to it. We get so used to just being in this negative EV environment where so much is taken out every single time we play. Like this is the opposite of that. It's like all these sponsors are coming together and putting up 125 grand for maybe 60 developers to all compete for, and it doesn't cost anything to enter, and it's just like that's how poker could be. I could imagine like poker being this this positive EV environment. It's so funny when I like listen to people talk about you know, poker's, you know, this even sum environment. It's not. It's hugely negative sum. So much money being taken out, and like what you said with with the Venetian, and I mean, I think that the worst offender is the World Series of Poker circuits, where I mean they're taking out close to 20% in rake, and you know, I'm just kind of scratching my head wondering how, like, what percentage of a player pool can have a positive expected result, you know, a positive ROI when they're taking away 20%, you know, out of every single prize pool. And I mean, at some point, it gets to this, this spot where nobody can win. You know, and I'm not sure how high of a rake that has to be, but I suspect that it's not that far from 20%.
I agree. It's the harsh reality of tournament poker. When someone sees a 365, they don't really realize it's 300 plus 65, and then another 3% of that 300 goes to the dealers. So it's actually more than 20% rake, and they try to justify it for, oh, we're just throwing a little extra more rake in there for the $1 million free roll, which 100 people qualify for out of thousands of people that play these events, and maybe 5% realistically have a chance of acquiring all those points to get to the $10,000 tournament free roll for the circuit events. And with hidden rake fees at Venetian, it's very tough when someone sees a 250, they can't even comprehend that it's 200 plus 50. It seems outrageous, but they just make it an even 250 and make it an even $400 buy-in. People don't really worry about it, that it's really 320 plus 80 or whatever crazy amount of rake it is. And if you have a 20% ROI, which is maybe top 10% of the field, you're breaking even. Then you put in travel costs, food, expenses, gas, time, effort, pain, suffering to break even. We're really in a pain-inducing sport.
Why do we do it? Why do we do it, Jeff?
Are we addicted? Are we that deep into it that we have no other choice? Are we all delusional about our skill sets that we think we're X amount better than we really are, and we're going to find that log term? Or we're on a downswing and we're due for a big win? Or we're on a heater and we can't lose? These are all mental things that happen that trick people into playing poker tournaments. I know this is all very negative, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, I would like to see poker change, you know, to the point where we show up for an event and there's no rake anymore. It's just all subsidized by sponsors and, you know, viewer fees, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's kind of where poker was heading, or at least that was the promise of poker. You know, like with initiatives like the Epic Poker League. You know, that was fun while it lasted, I guess.
Yeah, I could only imagine a euphoric poker community where they have just endless sponsors fighting to not only pay for the rake to the venue, but also pay the players to wear their patches. So not only is there no rake, is that people are actually getting paid, like back in the old days when Stars and Full Tilt were just slapping patches on people for $10K to be at a feature table, just burning money. If we can get that environment, there'll be so much more new money, more winners, less losers, and an overall better environment. The hard part is getting the sponsors to do this.
Yeah, and I feel like traditionally all the sponsors have primarily been online poker rooms. So that's not really outside money, you know, even though like a single event can it creates kind of this illusion of having money coming into the environment, but it's not really. It's just kind of recycled money from other poker players. So I feel like until we start getting non-poker related outside sponsorship, you know, like sportswear and energy drinks and things like that, poker's going to continue to just be really, really tough. Because I feel like when we go to the Venetian and play, the real opponent in that equation, what's really keeping us from, you know, just maximizing expected value is that rake.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not to mention the $10 illusionary food comp that they don't even mention, and you have to go to a special place and ask for it. It's got to be at least a $400 tournament during the winter, at least a $600 tournament during the summer. Half the people don't know about it. They just want the free hat or card protector. We're just trying to get a little free food. They don't advertise it.
You know, for all the tournaments I've played over at the Venetian, I still don't have a hat or a card protector. I was like, no, I'll take the $10 off a salad. You know, just give me my food comp. I don't need any advertising for Venetian.
Grand Lux is delicious. I've never had a bad meal delivered from Grand Lux, but the act of them automatically tipping when they deliver always strikes me the wrong way, because you order a $13 lunch special, they bring it out, they say that'll be $18, and then you're like, oh, well, here's 20. You just got double tipped. And you're like, what just happened?
The worst.
Or you give them 0, and they're just like, oh, thanks, buddy. You know.
I'll tell you what really tilts me, Jeff. Like what never fails to tip me is, you know, when I'm in the middle of a hand or, you know, focused to the table and I tip, you know, I ask for a drink. The cocktail waitress comes by. I tip her $1, and she gets really like overly thankful for the $1, where to the point where I'm like, did I just tip more than $1? Did I just give her like a 10 or a 20? Like, did I just fuck that up? It's always really tilting. Like, wait a minute, she's a little too thankful for $1. Oh, jeez.
She could have been condescending.
It goes
Jack and Coke, $1. Come on.
There goes my whole expected value for this tournament. It's just gone. One tip.
It's funny you mentioned that, because last week at the Win, I tipped the waitress when I was during a hand. I wasn't paying attention. When she came back, I asked her. I said, "Did I give you a 10 or a 1?" And I had a read on her after she said this. She goes, "I don't remember." I'm like, I'm sure you don't remember now, but you would have remembered. You would have said, yes, you gave me the 1, or yes, you gave me the 10. Not, I don't remember.
Well, what we learned from that is it doesn't matter what you give them; they won't remember.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to talk a little more about your upbringing when it comes to your accelerated school progress. I remember seeing some of the first episodes of the World Series back in 2003. They featured you, and they talked about how you flew through school. You're this child genius prodigy. You got a law degree at 18 years old. Can you tell the viewers a little bit more about how that happened?
Well, you know, it sounds crazier than it actually was. You know, when I was, I went through elementary school the same as everybody else. You know, just until I hit 4th grade, and then I was kind of at the top of the class when it came to like reading and math, and I don't know. It doesn't take that much to be smarter than a 4th grader, I guess. You know, I didn't really feel like I didn't really feel any different. But after summer, the principal of the school and my mom tried putting me in 2 grades higher. So I went from 4th grade, finished up 4th grade, and then went straight into 7th grade. And that was kind of a tough adjustment. You know, like being 2 years younger than everybody else was a lot harder than being 7 years younger than everybody else. Because then after 7th grade, sometime during 7th grade, I took the ACT with a bunch of other people in the little gifted class that we were in, and I didn't like nail it. You know, like that. Like they did something called a Duke Talent Search, where they sent out a bunch of ACT tests to all these kids in a bunch of different, basically middle school gifted programs. We all took it, and I remember there were when all the results from this Duke Talent Search came out, there were a bunch of kids who just crushed it. 4 kids who took that ACT test ended up getting a perfect on it.
36.
36. And there were a few kids who got like 35 and 34s and 33s all the way down. And I wasn't in that like super top tier group. I had gotten a 23 on it. which is still respectable. You know, it's not like it's a bad score. And like if you know, and it beat out the average score of the senior class at the high school that I'd be going into. You know, I was at a pretty small town in rural Missouri, and the senior class was, you know, the average was 17 or 18. So, you know, and I was 2 years younger than everybody taking it anyway. So I was, you know, I guess 10 or 11 when I took it. So 23 was all right, and it was also, you know, we lived right next to a community college where if you got 18 or better on the ACT, they had an open admissions policy, so anyone could go. Anyone could go to the community college if they got an 18 or better. And so I was like, oh well, 23. It was mainly, you know, I wouldn't say it was really even my decision. You know, I mean, 11 and 12-year-old kids aren't really like making their own life-changing educational decisions. I think it was more my mom thinking, you know what, why don't we try putting you into this community college and see how it goes? And when she said, well, you know, if you go to this community college, you can start part-time. You'll only have to, you know, go to 2 classes a week. you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours on, you know, 2 hours a day. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, let's give it a shot. So I went half-time and started up at a little community college. And then the next semester went full-time, 12 hours a week. And, you know, going from, you know, the amount of time spent in a classroom as you know, in middle high or high, you know, high school is just way more than when you actually are at college doing full time, because 12 hours a week is really not that big of a case, you know, a course load, 15 hours a week, you know. So went through college just normally. 2 years at a community college, transferred over to Central Missouri State University for a 4-year degree, and then got accepted into law school when I took the LSAT at 14 or 15, and started law school at 15, graduated at 18, and then had no idea what I wanted to do. I don't really think I would do it again. I don't even think I would encourage other people to try to push their kids through the education system too quickly. I think it kind of got me into this mentality that quicker is better, and I don't think that's actually is the case. I think that a lot of you know, a lot of the reason you maybe want to go through you know, a formal education and get a degree is, you know, going through the process. And for me, the process was much different. I also kind of feel like it put me in this mentality that you know, that kind of led me to tournament poker, because I mean, you know, the tournament poker mentality is all about very, you know, quick scores, and, you know, getting from nothing to a million, you know, in a week or two, you know. And I think that it's such a different mentality than going through like a cash game grind where, you know, it's just plugging away and working hard. There's no quickness to that, you know. So I think I don't know. In some ways, I think maybe it damaged me. I don't think that I would encourage other people to do it. It definitely was socially very frustrating, you know, being in college courses at 12 and 13, and you know, hormones raging, looking around, and like just being completely you know, completely frustrated. You know, I wasn't really dating, you know, girls until I was, you know, 16, 17 years old. And my first girlfriend was in my law school, and she was like, you know, she was a couple years younger than us in the school. It was like when I was a 3L, so she was a 1L, and she was older, you know.
How was the public reception of being in college at 13, 14, 15 years old when they're all 18 to 20? Did they accept you, or were they kind of hypocritical?
Yeah, I mean, they when I finally got to college, they all were pretty accepting. You know, it was that first 2-year skip was a lot tougher. You know, because you know, junior high kids are generally a little bit harder, you know, on
Jealous.
differences.
Like, oh, this kid's—he thinks he's as smart as me. He's 2 years younger. Does that make me dumb?
I mean, that's there was some of that. I didn't feel smarter than anybody. I felt like it wasn't really my decision. But I do feel like there was some resentment there when I finally when I finally was sitting with adults. It's not, they're a little bit easier on the kid.
Makes sense. Have you ever taken an IQ test?
Yeah, I took one when I was really young, and I don't really know how much I put into them. I'm sure that it fluctuates. I haven't taken one recently.
Okay. Do you attribute your rise through the academics more to your upbringing of what your parents did, or more genetics? Just your brain is just like a supercomputer.
I think it's probably more to upbringing. Like my mom was working with us, teaching us how to read really young. I started reading when I was 3, and I would always have, like, anytime it was like nap time, I'd always have the option of reading a book instead. So I read a lot. I hated sleeping. I think that had a lot to do with it. But Jeff, like I said, I don't think that it was anything really that special, because I keep on thinking about those 4 kids who took that ACT with us, who actually scored a perfect on that test. There were a lot of kids who could have done it, thousands, tens of thousands maybe around the nation, who could have easily just jumped into a community college course and did the same thing, jumped into a 4-year university, got their bachelor's, jumped into a law degree program at 14, 15. Everybody's different, and that's one thing that I think, our nation's education system gets wrong, is just kind of bundling everybody up and treating them as just the same. I think I think about those 4 kids, because whatever happened to them, they probably went through straight. They took it again. Well, I guess if you get perfect, you don't have to take it again. But when they when they got older, they're getting accepted to like Harvard and Yale and who knows what.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, my life would definitely be different. I think if I would have gone through normally and taken it again when I was like 16, like everybody else, and tried to maybe I get into a better school, maybe I'm making more money now. Maybe the same thing happens and I drop out. I feel like a lot of poker players dropped out of school because they were, you can't really drop out of school when you're 14. I guess some people, a lot of people do, but what else are they going to do? I don't know.
Yeah. So you got your law degree at 18, and then did you apply for jobs then, or you just said, this ethically isn't for me, I can't be a lawyer?
No, I never applied for any jobs. I just I wasn't really into being a lawyer. I didn't know what I wanted to do with the degree. I haven't done anything with it since. So just like an expensive student loans that I have, that I'm still worrying about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, at least you got that piece of paper, and you know the law. You know what laws you can break, what laws are copyright infringement, speeding, whatever it is. You know the laws.
Kind of. I don't know. I still get into trouble sometimes. That's funny. It's funny the way that you put that, Jeff. It's good that you got that piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, that's what they all say. College degrees.
Thank God for
useless.
Thank God that I have that piece of paper.
Yeah, no. Not to put it down, I don't have that piece of paper. I put in the work and time for less than a piece of paper. I got nothing. I just got poker. But that's okay. I'm happy with the choice I've made, the freedom it's given me, and not working for the man has exponential benefits that can't be monetarily, tracked.
It feels good not having anybody, who can yell at you or tell you what to do. But at the same time, I feel like I got into poker for the freedom as well. But I keep on going back to it and thinking, at the end of the day, poker still is just, sitting at a table trading time for money, just like any other job. And just because you get to choose how many hours, like when you work your hours, you're still having to put in a lot of hours, and you can't really escape that. There's no escaping that. Like it's just kind of this illusion of freedom, but in the end, it's still a grind like any other job.
Absolutely, a lot of pros and cons, but in the end, a working guy, 9 to 5, they're making $12 an hour. We might be losing $12 an hour. It depends how you look at it.
Exactly.
We got a question from local Vegas reg Bobby. 2 questions. He wants to know why you wear a snow hat during the winter, or I guess during the summer. Yeah, during the summer.
What a great question, Bob. What is a wonderful question. Look, sometimes it's freaking cold in these casinos. I mean, there were a few tournaments over at the Rio where it had to be less than 60 degrees in that room. So even when you're in Vegas playing, in the dead of summer where it's 120 degrees outside, generally you still want to layer it up and be ready for whatever the casinos decide to throw at you. They like to keep it chill, and in my own place, I like to keep it really cold as well.
Okay.
So,
and he also,
plus I'm bald. I don't have Jeff's beautiful hairline. I miss my hair.
It happens. And I'm sure Bobby, you gave him a little investment tip about Golem. Do you still think it's a good investment?
I do. It hasn't really been moving for a while. It's been just kind of floundering around. So if people don't know, Golem is a cryptocurrency altcoin, basically. So when it comes to crypto, you got the granddaddy Bitcoin, the original blockchain, and then there were I think the second one was Litecoin, basically a fork from a guy named Charlie Lee, basically playing around with the code, forking the repo, and saying, look, anybody can do this. There were a bunch of kind of jokes with like things like Dogecoin, Drones coin. It's kind of a joke. And then a lot of other blockchain cryptos that are actually like their own standalone currencies. Things like Dash, things like Ant or Neo, things like Zcash. But then Ethereum, and then under Ethereum kind of opened up to have these tokens, and a lot of these altcoins then are not their own crypto. When people think about like cryptocurrency and lump in Golem, I feel like it's not really fundamentally it's different. It's more like investing in a business than it is investing in just a decentralized cryptocurrency. But Golem is an Ethereum based token. It was one of the first ICOs that came out when Ethereum started tokenizing and allowing these tokens under something called ERC-20. And Golem was one of the companies that decided to raise money for their project using Ethereum, and it's basically a way that people are going to rent out their own computer cycles for an AI projects. So right now, when researchers are trying to build some sort of machine learning algorithm, they need to throw a lot of computing power at making this happen. They'll go to something like Amazon Web Service and rent out a bunch of processors through Amazon. And someone thought about it for a while and thought, there's a lot of processing power out there that's just going to waste. Every time Jeff's computer goes to sleep, or every time he just puts his phone on the rail and isn't looking at it, that's processing power that could be used in all these projects and could be used really cheaply. So Golem is trying to unlock all that wasted processing power that's just not doing anything. It's kind of like an Airbnb for your smartphone or your computer. You're not using your computer right now. You're not using your smartphone right now. Why not let some researcher at the University of Alberta use it to run their machine learning algorithms rather than, renting a dedicated CPU from Amazon. So it's kind of like some of these decentralized storage projects like Sia Coin or Storage or Filecoin, but instead of storage, Golem is all about unlocking processing power. And I think it's a really important project. I think it's still a winner. But anytime you look at investing in an altcoin, it's tough because it's not really investing in crypto. It's investing in a crypto related company, and the chances of the company doing better than the crypto itself is kind of questionable. There's always this opportunity cost, and to give you an example, Jeff, there was an ICO this summer called Storage, where they went from something called a counterparty token to an Ethereum based token, and they opened it up, and everyone was really excited about it. And I put a bunch of Ethereum into it. They didn't release the tokens for about a month, and the whole development team kind of started falling apart, and the project kind of started just looking horrible. And once I finally got out of it, I was, over an 8-week period, I was still able to get like a 20-something% ROI, which if you're comparing that to any traditional investment, like in a stock market or something, that's insanely good. The whole time that happened, I'm watching Ethereum almost triple. And it didn't feel like a win at all, because if I didn't have the money in storage, I would have had it in Ethereum, and Ethereum went from like 120 to 360 over the course of that, over the course of the month that I'm waiting to get my storage tokens out. And, it felt like a loss. And it's like with this crypto roller coaster, it's so weird because the worst day in stock history was a day that they call Black Friday in October of 87, and the whole stock market was down, I think, 20%. And that's bad, horrible, I mean, people were, just sobbing, I'm sure. But with cryptocurrency, that's just like a normal Thursday. You wake up and you check how the cryptos are doing, and it's like, oh, it's up 20%, or oh, it's down 20%. I mean, imagine if you're looking at your crypto portfolio and it's down 20%, and you're just freaking out. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst day of all time. Yeah. This is like a normal Thursday, and I feel like if there's one thing that poker tournaments has done pretty well, it's just beaten the risk aversion out of us. I feel like we're more suited to weather those kind of storms.
We've been numb to the swings, which makes us better in the crypto world, where we can lose or gain 20, 30% in a day, and we're just like, happens. Just another day. But yeah, that's great for sharp investors in the crypto space also, because of all the noobs that come in, lose 20% in a day and say, I'm out, I can't handle it. And they sell low, we buy low, and then they buy back in when it's high because they're like, hey, I want a winner. This baby's pumping. It's up 100% today. Then
crypto's a weird space, man. But I'm really interested in it right now.
Yeah, very interesting. So a lot of great YouTube channels out there that you can follow, like Crypto, Node Investor, Data Dash. Those are some of my favorites if you guys want to learn a little more about crypto.
Are you holding some bags, Jeff?
Oh,
some crypto bags right now.
Who isn't bag holding? It's all about not thinking about the bad, accentuating the good. A lot of times it's better just to hold the top three and just ignore it. Just wait. Don't care about the swings. Cash out, I guess, when you really need to, but just hold it as a diversified investment in your portfolio.
I feel like that's great advice. Once you start day trading, I feel like it's so much stress, and I don't really know a lot of people who are doing that well, just trading back and forth. I mean, it's kind of hard to lose in crypto right now, as far as looking at it in the dollar amount. But I know a lot of people who have lost a lot of Bitcoin going back and forth between, trying to guess movements and looking at 400-year-old dead Italian mathematicians as somehow being able to forecast the price movements of what's going to happen with a.
Talk about Fibonacci.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe one of these days, someone will be able to explain what he has to do with the price of Litecoin tomorrow.
It's all market cycles, they say. Who knows, you know? But yeah, I agree. Day trading, they say 90% of people just get wrecked trying it. So you're better off buying Bitcoin or Ethereum, holding on, and just ignoring it, forgetting all about it. Don't sweat it. It'll save you a lot of time and stress. Don't day trade.
Yeah. I don't know. People keep on thinking that it's just too late to get in, you know, like and there's definitely a unit bias when it comes to Bitcoin. I feel like so many people are looking at it thinking, oh, well, it's too expensive now. I can't buy a Bitcoin, can't afford a Bitcoin, but it's divisible, you know, and there shouldn't really be any difference if you're looking at putting $500 into crypto. Putting $500 into Bitcoin is the same as putting $500 into any other crypto. And people just look at it. Well, I can't really afford a whole Bitcoin. You don't have to afford a whole Bitcoin. You know, people are still going to be talking about how they missed the boat when they could have gotten into Bitcoin when Satoshi was at, you know, a penny. You know, oh, I had the opportunity to buy a bunch of Bitcoin when it was trading at 100,000. So they're going to be saying in 20 years, you know.
It's funny. I was talking to this cool bank teller I know at the local branch, and I said something about, "Yeah, so you should buy some Bitcoin." He goes, "I can't afford a Bitcoin." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't have to buy a whole one." He's like, "What?" People don't even realize that. And there's just such a learning curve to get into the space and how to store coins, what to do with them, and you know how to just add it to your portfolio. It's a high risk investment, but in the long run, it should be the future.
But I think it is, and I also am, you know, so many people think that it's just too late because everyone's in on it. It's too late. Everyone has it now, but they don't.
They don't.
You know, like when you ask 10 of your friends and how many of them actually have some, and you know the number is pretty small. Even in poker, you know, like I feel like everybody in poker has some, but it's not really. You know, when I'm sitting around and you know talking to the people that we're playing with, you know, maybe one other person at the table. You know, and I feel like poker is kind of you know kind of a unique niche industry where we're all, you know, spreading ideas and rubbing shoulders with a lot of different people every day. We have a lot of different social interactions with a lot of different people every day. So we're kind of as a group, you know, kind of quick adopters on things like this. You know, I would imagine that like other examples, probably like Twitter, when Twitter first started, I would imagine that, you know, the poker, you know, industry as a group probably had a bunch of, a bunch of the early good Twitter handles because we were the first in, you know.
True.
So
and I think there's an age discrepancy too. The older the person is at your poker table, the less likely they are to hold crypto or understand it.
And I keep on hearing the same arguments from some of these older guys. Like I was talking about, you know, Bitcoin the other day. Is like, well, you know what the problem is with Bitcoin is, you know, this older guy who's like in his 60s. Like, no, I don't. What is the problem? Enlighten me. He's like, well, it's really only used for drugs and money laundering.
And pedophiles too, and hitmen, prostitutes. That's all it's good for. Don't you know? That's what the media says.
I mean, this was like 2 months ago. Apparently, this is like what he believes. You know, that like this is all it is. It's like, well, actually, sir, no, you're wrong. I didn't really challenge him too much, but yeah, like a lot of people believe that. A lot of people are thinking that's all Bitcoin is. But it's a really powerful idea whose time has come, and I think it's, you know, one of the coolest developments that we've had in the last century.
Yep, very exciting times. Let's check out some of the questions in the chat. John Sutton says, "What about cash and timed rake?" Going back to our rake discussion, I guess he's saying, is timed rake better than per pot rake in cash games?
I don't think it's not supposed to really be different. when they're calculating time rake, I mean, usually it's I don't know what they even charge for time rake these days, like $12 a half hour, $10 a half hour. I mean, it depends on where you're playing. A little bell will ring and everyone's tossing $10 into the middle. And when you look at it over the course of an hour, I mean, that's really how you have to think about rake and cash games. How you probably tournaments too, but especially cash games is whatever they're taking out of each pot, and you got to think about 30, 35 hands it down. You multiply that, by how many hands an hour, and you divide that by how many players around the table, and that's what fundamentally everybody's paying per hour. I think that the casinos who are charging time are trying to charge the same amount as they would in a rate game, and generally the only reason that I see that casinos charge time is because they do it in bigger games where the denomination of chips don't really lend to breaking down into rake, and it just I don't know why. I don't know why would they charge time in a 25-50 no limit game instead of rake? I think it just is because it's quicker for the dealer just to take it all at once every half hour than to break down a chip into $4 or $5 that they're dropping down the hole every single hand, and it just allows them to play more hands an hour. I suspect that's what it is.
That makes sense. The most frequent time game I play was the 1-2-5 PLO with the Rio, but I think the easy exploit for that was you sit down at 10:35. You don't have to buy time. You don't have to pay time, and then you leave at 1:29. And you don't have to pay time. So you get them on both ends. Go back to the tournament. Go there during your dinner break, and you don't have to pay rake. You don't have to pay time. I think that's the way to do it.
Sounds like you got to figure it out.
System.
That reminds me, it used to be that you'd be able to sit down at like a limit or a no limit game, and if you sat down behind the button, you didn't have to post. And back in the 80s, they changed that from what I hear because of Skolansky, because Skolansky would walk up to a game and get dealt in behind the button and then play until the big blind and leave. And then he would repeat that, so he wasn't ever paying the blinds. He took it to a point where he was just able to just sit down and never pay the blinds for like 7 hands and then leave.
That's a lot of table changing.
Yeah. So the like what I heard was that they actually changed that, and it was called the Skolansky rule for a little while. You had to actually post.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting.
Now at OC Cash games, if you're under the gun, they'll ask if you want to be dealt in for free, or you can wait till you're behind the button and you don't have to pay the blinds and you get dealt in for free.
Yeah, I think it's come full circle now. I think that in most of the no limit games around town, I don't think that you actually have to post, but in the limit games you do. So
okay. I'm just happy the days of, you remember playing at Venetian when you had to post to get in a hand if you late regged? Yes,
I do.
That was horrible. I also remember when they would blind you out for late regging, like a 15K stack, they take 800 of that 5K, put it in the well, and ante off 100 every hand.
Yeah. So like if you regged on time, you were coming back to a shorter stack. It was so frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about the Venetian, about a little something that has really been kind of bugging me. And now that I think about it, we were at a table where this happened. You and I were playing together at the Venetian. So the Venetian takes a very, very strong stance against players exposing their whole cards before they're supposed to.
Early exposure.
That's right.
Can be sexual.
It makes sense, right? From this is something that you don't want to encourage. If somebody is exposing their whole cards, and it could it could affect the action, especially when there's other players in the pot. But what the Venetian does is, if someone exposes their whole cards at a turn or when they're not supposed to, they get an automatic 1-round penalty. Doesn't matter the situation, doesn't matter anything. No question about it. automatic 1-round penalty. And Jeff and I were playing at a table where this happened. Some guy under the gun, he limped in. Another guy raises, and the other guy, goes all in. And the guy who was the initial raiser forgot that this person was still in the pot. So, he makes the call and he exposes his hand. And this guy wasn't going to ever call. He's like, oh, I'm still in the hand. He's like, oh, sorry. And he folds. He folds face up, but he had nothing to even call with. He had like a 7-5. He was never ever calling. It didn't really affect the action at all. And it was an obvious mistake because the guy turned over a monster and he was really happy with his hand and he was really happy to collect this big pot. And no big deal. No one really cares. It didn't affect the action at all. It was an obvious beginner mistake. And then all of a sudden you hear the dealer being like, oh, I got to call the floor. And, I'm like, what are you talking about? Just deal the next. No, I have to call the floor. He's like, floor, comes over. He runs over. Yeah, what's up? Well, C5, he accidentally, shows, hey, oh, yeah, no, I didn't mean to. I think the right thing to do when you're at the Venetian and you accidentally show your hand is not to say, I didn't mean to. Say, I didn't show my hand. No one saw it. I almost did, but he didn't see it. Maybe you won't get a penalty. So they give this guy a penalty for a full round, which is just ridiculous. It was like, I've seen that happen to the Venetian about 3 or 4 times now. I'm sure that you've seen it countless times as well, Jeff, where a new player at the table who is just gifting us all money every single time he plays a tournament is now getting a tournament penalty and has to take a walk and feel like he did something wrong. It's embarrassing when you get a penalty at a tournament like that. It makes you not want to show up again, and it creates a bad experience. And for the life of me, I don't understand why the Venetian keeps on doing this, because every single time I've ever seen that rule enforced, every single time it's been against a recreational bad player who did it, who did it as a mistake and hurt themselves, if anybody. It's not like it didn't really affect any action, but if it did, it hurt their action. What are your thoughts on this, Jeff? Because it's completely maddening every single time I see some random get a penalty for this. Because there's so much angle shooting that you see in tournaments that actually should get penalties that are just like that's within the rules. But this noob just accidentally showed his hand and let someone make a good fold against him because he didn't even realize he was in the hand, and we're going to penalize him even more, embarrass him in front of everybody, and make him never want to show up again. I mean, like.
Yeah, I feel it alienates the new players. It does embarrass them, and they have to lose money, and they have to step away from the table for X amount of hands, like they're in a timeout, like they're a child. They messed up and they're getting punished when there was no harm, there was no ill will in accidentally showing their hand. They should be able to judge the person's intentions as opposed to just a hard set rule for 1 round. If it's 2 guys talking some foreign language, one shows their hand in a 3-way pot, okay, now there's something to talk about. If it's a old 80-year-old guy, recreational, doesn't know the actions on him, just wants to show that he limped in with some crap and he's not calling a shove, he shouldn't be penalized. I actually had an instance 1 month ago where I had back-to-back early exposure penalties at my table. Once on the turn, when it went check, the other person just shows the nuts. Other guy's like, what? He's like, oh, well, you got to keep your hand face up and you can bet or check. And so he just checked. River's nothing. The guy checked. The guy bet. The guy folded. Floor gets called over. Guy wins the pot. He gets a round penalty. The very next hand, the same thing happened on the river with an older woman. It's on her. She shows her hand before checking. Other person's like, well, I can still bet. And she's like, well, I got the second nuts. And they checked, and they're like, okay, she wins the pot. I got 2 people sitting out on full round penalties. The table thinks it's hilarious because we get to, blind them off, and we're now 7-8 handed. It's just bad for the game. And I'm pretty sure at the win, they are much more lenient on this. They might only give a half round penalty, or they might just, do it on a case-by-case basis.
I'm pretty sure it's just a warning first at every other place in the world. I'm like, anytime I've ever seen it happen over at the World Series, or anytime I've ever seen it happen anywhere else except for the Venetian, it's never an automatic penalty. It's always, the floor has discretion, and they always usually say, okay, well, you're gonna get a warning. Just don't let it happen again. And no big deal. I really don't understand why the Venetian is so hard on that rule, because it's not accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. Just maddening. Anyway, listen to us. We're sitting here talking about, how the rake is too big, and talking about tournament rules. Or what's become of us, man?
We're miserable old men. But I'll tell you, the main thing that tilts me, and I've only seen at the Venetian, is if there's a three-way all-in, they wait and separate all the stacks into 3 side pots before running out the board. It not only causes dealer error with 1650, 1650, 1650, 33.4, 33.4. Okay, side pot, main pot. Now you guys can show your hands, and then we'll figure it out. I talked to Matt Savage about this, and he said over half the time, the big stack's going to win it all. So you're just wasting time and causing confusion.
Yeah,
I think he talked to them. This was before the summer. This rule might have been changed, but if it hasn't, please, Venetian, Tommy, don't make the dealers do this. It just causes chaos, more tilt when I'm the short stack, and I got to wait to see all these better hands pulled up before I can do the walk of shame. And I don't see the pros versus the cons.
Yeah, it's not accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish.
But who are we? We're just the guys paying rake. Taylor C in chat says, do you see a relation between the negative connotation of poker and crypto? If so, how do you handle explaining it to the skeptics? Dutch?
Yeah, I suppose there's a relationship there. I mean, I feel like maybe a big chunk of the reason why so many poker players were early adopters to crypto is because of all the drug markets. I feel like there's a lot of drug use in poker, and that probably what led to a lot of the early adoptions. And look at the first crypto sites and the crypto projects. A lot of them were based on drugs and gambling. Satoshi Dice, in poker there was steals with clubs, and I suppose poker does. It does still have a social stigma when it comes down to it. It's still one of these things that's kind of lumped in with just general gambling, even though we know as poker players that poker couldn't be further from slot machines or roulette than just being a stock trader is. And there's really the only reason that it's really treated differently is because it was brought out to Vegas and put in the same casino floor as blackjack and craps. So, but yeah, I think poker still has a pretty bad stigma because of that. People look at gambling as a vice, as a negative social endeavor, as something that doesn't really bring a lot of positivity to anybody. And yeah, there is definitely still that stigma. How do I explain that away? I think was the second part of that question. If so, how do you handle explaining it to skeptics? I mean, I don't really worry about explaining the benefits of crypto or poker to skeptics most of the time. I don't really think if someone wants to make the argument, one clear example of this is when Annie Duke was on The Apprentice, and she was down to the wire with Joan Rivers, and Joan Rivers started, screaming about how her whole life was built on blood money. How she's a bad person because she's a poker player, a gambler, and all that she's built is based on destroying homes and families.
It was a good read on Joan Rivers, Annie Duke's character. Can't hate her for that one. And she said, "You're a poker player." This is the most disgusted voice you can imagine. I was like, wow.
She said it in such a disgusted way, and it made me realize, yeah, there continues to be a very big stigma against what we've chosen to do with our lives. And part of me can play devil's advocate and see it. Part of me can look at it and say, well, the overwhelming majority of people who play poker lose money doing it. I don't, when I look at it, as is there some sort of difference between the money that they lose at a poker table and the money that they lose at, say, the cinema? I mean, like, can you just say that we're kind of, allowing a form of entertainment that wouldn't exist without us as poker players? I mean, I don't know. You can make an argument for it, and you can also point to some positive things that have come out of poker. But it's hard to argue that poker isn't a social negative right now. It's like I feel like a lot of poker players, pretty much every poker player I know who has chosen to do it for a living, has always struggled with that. There's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance where, we all want to do something productive that goes and makes the world better and makes, our neighbors and our community stronger. And I think a lot of poker players kind of have this, once they've been in the game long enough, kind of have this bit of an existential crisis where they're like, well, what am I actually doing with my life? Whose life am I actually making better? And I think for the most part, the evolution of that goes something like this. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll start focusing on spending the money that I make at poker in charities and doing effective giving. And you see a lot of the top pros say, okay, well, I'm going to do 2% to one drop or whatever. And then the other pros are like, well, I'm taking whatever money I earn and making the lives of my family and the people who I care about the most better. And fuck the rest of everybody. But I don't know, Jeff. I mean, it's something that I struggle with. I remember the first time I saw a guy cry at the poker table, and it was not really that good of a feeling. It's the first time I realized, wow, this guy has lost way more money in this 6-12 limit game than he can afford to lose. And if you look at the roots of Black Friday, one of the big reasons that Black Friday happened was because there was a lawmaker's kid who was in a college program in the Midwest who lost a bunch of money at playing online poker, and instead of coming clean to his family and saying, listen, I just blew my college tuition on Poker Stars, instead he decided to rob a bank. This is some 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid decides to rob a bank, and that's how he's going to dig himself out of this gambling hole. And there you can actually take a direct, you can draw a direct line from that decision of some 19, 20-year-old college student to go rob a bank to Black Friday, because it was instrumental. It turns out his dad was like a reverend or a lawmaker or something, and it just was such a sensational headline.
Yeah, I agree. Poker is a very predatory environment, but I can also see how recreationals can view it as gambling, just like sports betting, playing bingo, scratch offs. Those are all negative gambles, but you have a chance of winning, and that's what makes it exciting.
But do you do those things, Jeff? Do you?
I do not.
Because I don't have those kind of leaks, and I don't understand pros who do. It feels obscene to me to go to a craps table and throw the dice when I know I have a negative edge there. It feels like, why would anyone enjoy that? And honestly, when I look at stuff like that, when I look at things like the lottery, when I look at things like scratch offs and pool tabs, and when I look at things like roulette and Keno, I wouldn't think, I'm not making the argument that the world wouldn't be a better place if we just pushed a button and Keno was gone. I kind of feel like maybe it would. I kind of feel like the world would be a better place if we didn't have a lottery. If we didn't have Powerball and scratch offs and pool tabs and You know, so I'm not. Yeah, it's hard for me to say, well, yeah, but poker's different. But poker is different. Poker doesn't have to be like a negative EV game. It just is a negative EV game the way that we play it. And I don't mean like you and me as the way we play, as the way we play it. I mean as the economy of poker is just not the economy of other games that should be at least even some chess and backgammon and bowling or whatever.
I agree. All right, just wrapping things up. Do you have any updates? I know back in the 2003, everyone was enamored that you had a crew of guys that all worked together. Gank, Scott Fishman, Joe Bartholdi. Yeah. You have any updates on them? Are you still in touch?
Yeah. I saw Bartholdi last week. We still hang out occasionally. Brett Youngblood, Gank, I hang out with him anytime he comes through town. I haven't seen Fishman for a couple of years. We kind of had a falling out after over stupid things. I'm sure that if I'm sure that we'd be able to patch things up eventually, but I haven't seen him around, and I'm actually, frankly, kind of concerned about that because I have a lot of people who keep on asking, "Hey, what's up with Fishman?" And I don't know, and I haven't seen him in any tournaments or any cash games in Vegas. I think he's still here in town, but I mean, when's the last time you saw him in a tournament?
That's true. Luckily, I know just the man for the job. Pokertube's own The Mans. He's on the hunt for Tom Dwan's. He might be on the hunt for Scott Fishman if the price is right. I'll let him know, have him watch this podcast. He'll be in the streets looking for Scott Fishman, making sure everything's okay.
I mean, I haven't seen him at the series even, for the last couple of years, and I never thought I would see the day where empty seat 88 Scott Fishman wouldn't be competing, because he's one of the best players I've ever seen when he's playing well. I mean, he had that World Series in 2004, 2 bracelets in a week and a half, really over a weekend. It's just. I've never had a run like that, Jeff. All my bracelets were spread out, and I've never had like that one like tournament series where I had 5 final tables that latest Venetian deep stack and had 3 tournament wins in 1 week. I see those kind of weird runs, but I've never had something like that. It's always just been like grind, score, grind, score. It's just, I don't know. Have you ever had one of those where you just like had like 3 or 4 tournaments that just like everything went right back to back?
Yes. Unfortunately, it was in the Win $225 Saturday rebuy. I won 3 of them in a row for around $10,000 each. So that run good could have been equal to $1,500 for $1 million, but
yeah,
it was at the wrong time.
That's pretty sick. 3 of those weekend win tournaments that's a good month.
Yeah, it was fun while it lasted. You get all these delusions of grandeur, saying, "Man, I can make 10K every week." Let's see, 52 taxes. Oh, easy game. And I guess that's the great thing about poker is once somebody wins, they're like, "Oh shit, that was easy. This is fun. Let's keep doing it."
Pretty much.
That's why when I get that big win, I'm out. Never playing again, leaving on top. I rode the mountain, remembering that memory, never playing again. Mark my words.
Okay. So what's the big win? What's the number where you're just like, see ya?
I mean, there's been so much pain. I'm just looking for that last bit of pleasure. 6 figures plus, 100K plus. Let's do this. I'm out. That's enough for me. I'll invest it in some Gollum, some real shit coins, watch them boom. Just knit it up, live off food comps, maybe go to China, Indonesia, some real low Thailand where all the women just crave to be your slave, allegedly. I wouldn't know. Low cost of living, enjoy life on a beach somewhere. There's no mosquitoes, and we're good.
Sounds like a good plan.
That's the plan. I just got to win that big one, maybe a win main event. Maybe a World Series, $500 special tournament. I'll take it. Just got to keep trying. And, yeah. It's been great talking to you, Dutch. Our time is about up. Is there anything else you want to say to the viewers before we wrap this up?
No, I can't really think of anything. We really appreciate being on being on your show here, Jeff. It's awesome, awesome actually having a chance to talk with you on the air, and it's always really cool seeing you at the table. Great to be a part of this.
It was a pleasure having you, Dutch. On behalf of Pokertube.com, make sure you hit that like button. Hit subscribe to Pokertube on YouTube to be alerted of all these impromptu live Pokertube podcasts. I may have some more D-list poker celebrities on in the future.
Some more D-list.
Wasn't a shot at you.
That was good.
I'm aiming to get D-list 90 celebrities on my YouTube channel. Saved by the Bell actresses, 90210, Fresh Prince. I'm reaching out to them. Not very successful so far. I'm getting old porn stars. You don't know. You never know until you ask. So I'm asking. I'm trying to get people on. Check out my recent video, Jeff Boski YouTube, Legends Strip Club Tour, the first strip club in Las Vegas to accept cryptocurrency. But if not, subscribe to Pokertube on YouTube. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. And until next time, on behalf of Dutch Boyd, it's Jeff Boski, and we are out.